This entire journey carries you from mental fragmentation to full inner command, from chaos to clarity, from distraction to discipline, from overwhelm to mastery. It begins in the noise of a world that pulls your mind apart and ends in the quiet, immovable power of an unshakable self. What unfolds is a complete metamorphosis: despair into awareness, awareness into transformation, transformation into victory, a total rewiring of identity and destiny, leaving you not just changed, but reborn into the person you were always meant to become. You've been living in a world that was never built for your peace, a world engineered to fracture your mind, scatter your attention, and bury your calm beneath constant noise. You feel it every morning before your feet touch the ground, the pull of 1,000 demands that aren't even yours. And yet, beneath all that chaos, there is a quieter truth waiting to be reclaimed. You were meant for focus, for clarity, for a centered life that feels like your own. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply untuned, pulled away from your inner rhythm by a world that profits from your distraction. The chaos you feel is not a flaw in your character. It is a natural response to unnatural pressure. And once you learn to step out of the storm, even for a moment, you begin to realize you were never the storm at all. You were the sky holding everything together. This journey is not about hacks, gimmicks, or quick bursts of inspiration that fade as fast as they arrive. This is a deep rewiring, a rebuilding of the pathways that govern your focus, your peace, and your power. You will learn to reclaim the parts of yourself you thought were gone: your stillness, your presence, your ability to lock in and stay centered. You will learn to see your mind not as an enemy to fight, but as an ally waiting to be trained. But before you rebuild, you must confront the reality of the world that shaped you. A world of constant alerts, endless feeds, invisible pressure, and manufactured urgency. A world that convinces you to react instead of create, to move without direction, to exist without presence. And yet inside that pressure lies the exact friction you need to awaken. Because the same world that fractures your attention can also forge your focus if you choose to rise above it. This script is your reset, a recalibration of how you think, how you breathe, how you move through a world that demands pieces of you. Each chapter will strip away noise. Each chapter will rebuild the structure inside you, waiting for direction. With every sentence, you return to a version of yourself that is sharper, calmer, and more powerful than ever before. You are stepping into a different way of being, a way of moving with intention instead of impulse, a way of thinking that cuts through noise instead of feeding it, a way of living that honors the deepest parts of you instead of burying them. This is the journey back to your center, the place where your power has always lived. From this moment forward, you are no longer drifting through your days. You are remembering what it feels like to take ownership of your mind. You are stepping toward clarity with every breath. And as you move into the next chapter, you begin the true work, the work of understanding how the world hijacked your attention and how you will take it back. Chapter 1. The world that hijacked your mind. The world you live in today was not built for your peace. It was built to capture your attention, to fragment your thoughts, to pull your mind in 100 directions before you take your first breath each morning. You already know the feeling: the buzzing alerts, the endless feeds, the pressure to respond, react, and keep up. This is not accidental. This is design, and it has shaped your brain more than you realize. You weren't born scattered. Your mind wasn't created weak. But every notification, every demand, every digital tug has slowly rewired the pathways inside you. The world learned that the easiest way to control a person is to control their focus. And the easiest way to control focus is to overwhelm it. And so the noise grew louder, the expectations heavier, the distractions sharper, until calm felt impossible and clarity felt like a distant memory. This is the hidden cost of the modern age. Not just lost minutes or wasted hours, but lost dreams, dreams you once held with fire. You felt momentum once, but momentum dies in a mind that cannot stay still. You felt hunger once, but hunger fades when your attention is siphoned away before it can land on purpose. The world did not steal your potential. It stole the focus required to reach it. You have been conditioned to live in reaction, to jump at the slightest vibration, to treat urgency as importance and stimulation as satisfaction. And the more you adapt to this rhythm, the more it drains you, the more it convinces you that you lack discipline, that you lack will, that you lack something fundamental. But you don't. What you lack is protection, protection from a system built to overload your senses and erode your inner authority. You feel the weight of this every day, the exhaustion that doesn't make sense, the fog that follows you even after sleep, the anxiety that rises for reasons you can't explain. These are not random feelings. These are signals, your mind's way of telling you that it has been stretched beyond its design. You were built for depth, but you've been forced into constant surface level living. But here's the truth that changes everything. The moment you understand the enemy, you disarm it. The moment you see how your attention has been shaped, you can choose to reshape it. The world may have hijacked your focus, but it did not destroy your ability to reclaim it. Because focus is not a gift. Focus is not luck. Focus is a trained response, a muscle waiting to be rebuilt. Your brain is not static. It adapts. It rewires itself based on what you repeatedly do, repeatedly consume, repeatedly chase, and for too long, it has been trained by noise. But the same wiring that once worked against you can be redirected to work for you. The same pathways that fed distraction can be reshaped into pathways of discipline, calm, and deep presence. This is where your power begins. Not with perfection, not with a flawless routine, but with awareness. Awareness is the first crack in the armor of distraction. When you see the mechanics of the world around you, you no longer move blindly through it. You start choosing, and every choice you make in your own favor becomes a strike against the forces that once dictated your life. But awareness is only the beginning. You must now confront the truth that the world profits when you are unfocused. Companies compete for your attention the way nations compete for land. Every second you give away is a resource. Every click is currency. The more distracted you are, the more valuable you become to systems that don't care about your growth, your peace, or your becoming. And this is why reclaiming your focus feels like rebellion, because it is. When you choose silence over stimulation, you break the cycle. When you choose presence over impulse, you dismantle conditioning. When you choose depth over distraction, you become dangerous to a world that expects you to stay overwhelmed. Focus isn't just a skill, it is a form of resistance. But resistance is not enough. You cannot simply pull away from the noise. You must rise above it. You must build a mind strong enough to stand in a loud world without losing its internal quiet. A mind capable of locking onto what matters and letting everything else fade. A mind that does not scatter when life becomes heavy. A mind that remembers its power even under pressure. Because once you understand how the world hijacked your mind, you no longer fear it. You no longer feel broken in the face of distraction. You no longer assume your struggle is a personal failing. You begin to see the architecture behind your impulses. And in that moment, you step out of helplessness and into authority. Authority over your thoughts, authority over your actions, authority over your direction. From here, something powerful begins to shift inside you. You stop seeing focus as something mystical that some people are born with and others are denied. You stop believing the lie that calm is unreachable in a chaotic world. You start realizing that both are skills, skills forged through intention, repetition, and the willingness to slow down in a world obsessed with speed. You understand that mastery is not given, mastery is trained, and the moment you accept that truth, you feel something return to you, a sense of control you thought you had lost. This control is not loud, it is not dramatic. It starts as a whisper, a quiet reminder that your mind is not a battlefield you are doomed to lose. It is territory you can reclaim, inch by inch, breath by breath. And as you step into the next chapter, you begin the deeper work of learning exactly how the world captured your attention, so you can take it back forever. This is where your real awakening begins, and your reclaimed focus takes shape now. Chapter 2. The Hidden Cost of Distraction. Distraction doesn't just steal your time. It steals the person you were meant to become. Every moment you drift, every impulse you obey, every notification that pulls you away from yourself takes a piece of your future with it. You've felt this in the quiet moments, when your day ends and you know you didn't move any closer to the life you imagine. That emptiness isn't laziness. It's the weight of a mind stretched thin. A mind constantly shifting lanes can never build momentum. And without momentum, even your strongest intentions crumble. This is the hidden cost of distraction. Not loud failure, but slow erosion. Not dramatic collapse, but daily self-abandonment you barely notice until it shapes your identity. You've abandoned dreams not because you lack talent, but because distraction weakened the connection between your desire and your action. Ideas that once lit you up faded under the constant glow of screens. Goals that once felt urgent became buried beneath trivial tasks that felt easier in the moment. Distraction doesn't shout, it whispers. It convinces you that 5 minutes won't matter, that scrolling is harmless, that you'll get back on track later. But later rarely comes, and every small surrender becomes a pattern. Every pattern becomes identity. When you live in fragments, you start to feel fragmented. The world inside you becomes scattered, and you mistake that scattering for who you are, instead of what you've been conditioned to become. A chaotic mind cannot build a disciplined life. When your attention jumps, your intentions weaken. When your focus cracks, your confidence follows. You begin doubting yourself not because you are incapable, but because you never give your mind the stability required to succeed. Think about how many times you've promised yourself change, only to be derailed by something small, something meaningless, something designed to hook you. This is how distraction shapes identity, not by defeating you outright, but by convincing you that you can't rely on yourself. And once you believe that lie, you stop reaching for your potential. You settle for mental noise instead of mental strength. You drift because drifting feels familiar, even when it hurts. But distraction costs more than productivity. It costs emotional stability. A scattered mind is an anxious mind. When your attention splinters, your sense of control collapses. You feel overwhelmed not because life is impossible, but because you are processing it in fragments. You start reacting instead of responding, surviving instead of choosing. The smallest tasks feel heavy. The simplest decisions feel complicated. And deep inside, you feel a quiet frustration because you know you are capable of more than the version of yourself you keep repeating. This tension is the psychological debt of distraction. Every unfocused moment adds pressure. Every lost hour teaches your brain that your goals are optional. And as that belief deepens, the distance between you and your potential widens. But here's the truth most people never realize. The pain you feel is proof that you are ready to evolve. If distraction truly satisfied you, it wouldn't bother you. If it fulfilled you, it wouldn't drain you. The discomfort you carry is not a flaw. It is a signal that your mind is tired of being pulled apart, a signal that a deeper part of you is demanding change. You are not frustrated because you are failing. You are frustrated because you are waking up. Awakening hurts. Awakening exposes how much you've settled. But awakening also reveals possibility. It shows you the gap between who you are and who you could become. And once you see that gap, you can no longer pretend you don't. Every distraction you've ever given into has shaped you, not in dramatic ways, but in subtle ones. The way you delay uncomfortable tasks, the way you avoid silence, the way you reach for stimulation the moment life feels heavy. These habits don't just influence your behavior, they sculpt your identity. You begin believing you're someone who can't stay consistent, someone who can't stay focused, someone who always slips. But that identity is counterfeit. It was built accidentally, without intention, formed by repetition rather than choice. And the moment you see that, you reclaim the power to rewrite it. Because if distraction can shape identity through repetition, so can discipline, so can clarity, so can deliberate focus rooted in who you want to become, not who you've been. This is where tension becomes transformation. You stand at the edge of two selves, the one shaped by distraction and the one shaped by intention. One lives in reaction, the other lives in creation. One is fragile, the other is focused. And every choice you make moves you toward one or the other. The beauty of this moment is that nothing about your past prevents your future. Every fragmented day has prepared you for clarity. Every moment of overwhelm has strengthened your desire for peace. The pain you feel is the doorway. The fatigue is the invitation. You are not breaking down. You are breaking open. And everything inside you knows it. You can feel the shift, the stirring, the quiet readiness for something more disciplined, more present, more you. Now you approach the first internal breaking point, the moment where you stop running from the truth of your own potential. This breaking point isn't a collapse, it's a confrontation with the habits that numbed you, the distractions that drained you, the patterns that kept you small. Here you finally recognize that you cannot become the person you envision while living in the same mental loops that held you back. Something must shift. Something must be released, and something powerful must be claimed. This is the threshold between who you were and who you are becoming. You step forward not because you feel ready, but because you refuse to continue shrinking. You move because you sense that on the other side of distraction lies discipline, and on the other side of chaos lies clarity. You choose expansion now. Chapter 3. The moment you decide to take your mind back. There is a moment in every life when you stop running from yourself and finally turn to face the truth. A moment when exhaustion becomes clarity, when frustration becomes fuel. When you realize the world has been steering your attention, but no longer has permission to do so. That moment is not loud. It is a quiet rebellion, a decision whispered deep inside you. Enough. Enough drifting, enough reacting, enough surrendering your mind to noise. This is the moment you decide to take your mind back. Up until now, you've lived in a state of quiet helplessness, not because you chose it, but because the world trained you into it. You were pulled by impulses you didn't understand, triggered by distractions you didn't invite, guided by habits you didn't consciously build. You moved through your days reacting to everything and choosing almost nothing. But in this moment of awareness, something shifts. Helplessness gives way to defiance. A new voice rises inside you, steady and sharp, declaring that your attention is no longer up for auction. Choice is where mastery begins, not with perfect discipline, not with flawless routines, but with a single decision that cuts through years of mental noise. The decision to stop giving your power away. The decision to stand firm in a world built to make you bend. When you choose to reclaim your mind, you ignite a spark the world cannot extinguish. Because choice is the birthplace of identity, and identity is the engine of transformation. With one internal shift, you begin rewriting the story you once felt trapped inside. But deciding to take your mind back is more than inspiration, it is confrontation. You must confront the impulses that tug at you, confront the thoughts that sabotage you, confront the old versions of yourself that cling to comfort, even when comfort is destroying you. This confrontation is uncomfortable because it forces you to witness your patterns without excuses. Yet this is where strength is forged. You cannot command your mind if you refuse to meet it honestly. And honesty becomes the bridge between who you were and who you will become. Defiance grows into empowerment the moment you realize you do not have to obey every thought that appears in your mind. You do not have to follow every urge, feed every distraction, or bend to every emotional flicker. You begin to understand that your impulses are not your identity. They are merely echoes of old conditioning. And when you see them clearly, they lose their authority. You rise above them with a calm firmness, choosing presence over reaction, intention over instinct, clarity over chaos. This is the birth of inner authority, and as that authority grows, you start to feel something you haven't felt in a long time: possibility. The possibility that your mind can become sharp again. The possibility that your thoughts can become obedient to your goals. The possibility that the life you envisioned isn't gone. It's simply been waiting for you to reclaim the steering wheel. This possibility electrifies you. It turns your decision into commitment. It turns commitment into identity, and identity into momentum. You feel yourself shifting from being controlled to becoming the one who controls. Yet empowerment alone is not enough. You need understanding, You cannot rebuild a mind you do not understand. You cannot rewire patterns if you don't know how they were formed. So the next phase of your transformation is knowledge. Real knowledge about how your brain works, why it reacts the way it does, and how it can be reshaped with deliberate repetition. This understanding isn't academic. It's liberating. When you understand your mind, you stop fearing it. You stop fighting it. You begin guiding it with clarity and purpose. This is the turning point for your entire life. The moment when you stop imagining change and begin engineering it. The moment when you shift from drifting to driving, from reacting to directing. You no longer wake up hoping for focus. You cultivate it. You no longer wait for peace. You build it. And with every choice you make in alignment with this new identity, you reinforce the neural pathways of mastery. You are no longer the victim of your mind's habits. You are the architect of its evolution. But evolution demands responsibility. You must take responsibility for every thought you train, every habit you reinforce, every moment you either drift or deepen. Responsibility is not punishment. It is power. It means nothing controls you unless you allow it. It means your future is shaped by your awareness, your discipline, your willingness to choose strength over ease. This is not a burden. It is liberation. Responsibility gives you the keys to your own mind. And once you hold the keys, nothing can keep you locked inside your old patterns. As you stand in this new awareness, you feel the rise of a quiet certainty. The certainty that you are capable of far more than the world has led you to believe. The certainty that reclaiming your mind is not a dream. It is a discipline you can build. The certainty that this decision marks the true beginning of your transformation. From helplessness to defiance. From defiance to empowerment. From empowerment to understanding. And now, with this foundation set, you are ready for what comes next. Learning exactly how your brain works so you can rewire it from the inside out. You advance now forward. Chapter 4. How your brain builds focus. Your brain is always building something. Every thought, every habit, every moment of attention becomes a blueprint your mind quietly follows. Most people believe focus is a personality trait, something fixed, something only a few disciplined people are born with. But the truth is far simpler and far more empowering. Your brain builds focus the same way it builds anything else, through repetition. What you repeat, you strengthen. What you scatter, you weaken. Your mind is not judging you. It is simply adapting to the signals you send it every single day. Imagine your brain as a network of pathways. Every time you concentrate, you reinforce the pathways of clarity. Every time you drift, you reinforce the pathways of chaos. Focus strengthens through consistent direction, but distraction strengthens through randomness. The more you bounce between tasks, apps, impulses, and thoughts, the more your brain wires itself for fragmentation. That stressed, jumpy feeling you carry isn't personal failure, it's physiology. A mind trained on randomness produces random results. A mind trained on depth produces powerful results. This is why the modern world feels so overwhelming. Your brain is ancient, but the environment around you is new, unnaturally fast, unnaturally loud, unnaturally stimulating. Your brain evolved to handle a few important signals at a time, yet now it absorbs hundreds within minutes. And because your mind adapts, it becomes wired for constant novelty. It learns to expect stimulation. It learns to crave it. Over time, this rewiring makes stillness feel uncomfortable and noise feel normal. The result is a brain built for chaos, even when your soul is begging for clarity. At the core of this rewiring lies dopamine. Dopamine is not the chemical of pleasure people imagine. It is the chemical of pursuit, of anticipation. When something unpredictable might reward you, dopamine surges. That surge forms loops. Check your phone, feel a spark. Scroll once, feel another. Refresh again, feel the possibility of more. These loops are not accidents. They are engineered traps. Each micro hit convinces your brain that distraction is the path to reward. And because your brain wants reward, it follows the loop again and again, strengthening the circuitry of impulsiveness. The more your dopamine system is trained on fast, unpredictable rewards, the harder it becomes to focus on slow, meaningful work. Tasks that require depth feel dull in comparison. Goals that require patience feel heavy. The mind becomes restless, constantly seeking stimulation instead of satisfaction. This is how focus breaks, not through a single failure, but through repeated conditioning that teaches your brain to prefer chaos over clarity. But here is the truth the world rarely tells you. If the brain can be conditioned into chaos, it can be conditioned out of it too. Rewiring your brain is not abstract science reserved for experts. It is a daily practice anyone can master. Every time you choose a moment of intentional focus, you strengthen the neural pathways of discipline. Every time you finish a task without checking your phone, you teach your brain stability. Every time you sit with silence instead of stimulation, you remind your dopamine system that reward doesn't have to be loud. Your brain is plastic, adaptable, alive. It changes based on what you demand from it, and you are allowed to demand more than scattered attention. Think of your brain like a garden. If you water distractions, distractions grow. If you water discipline, discipline grows. The soil doesn't care what seeds you plant. It simply multiplies whatever you feed. This means your past doesn't matter as much as you think. Even if you've spent years chasing noise, you can choose today to build pathways of clarity. The moment you direct your attention with intention, the rewiring begins. Not months from now, not after you become better. Now, your brain responds immediately to your choices. But rewiring requires consistency. A single deep focus session won't override years of distraction. Just as one workout won't transform your body, you must train your mind the way an athlete trains their muscles. Gradually, deliberately, repeatedly. There will be resistance at first. Your brain will crave the old patterns because they feel familiar. But that resistance is proof the rewiring is happening. The discomfort is the doorway. Every time you step through it, the pathways of clarity grow stronger and the pathways of chaos grow weaker. There is a profound power in understanding how your brain truly works. When you realize distraction is not a character flaw but a neural pattern, you stop attacking yourself and start training yourself. When you understand dopamine loops, you stop feeling guilty for craving stimulation and start redirecting that craving toward meaningful goals. Knowledge becomes your armor. Awareness becomes your leverage. You no longer feel controlled by your impulses because you finally understand the machinery behind them. And now that you know how your mind builds focus and how it loses it, you stand at the threshold of true internal mastery. But before you can fully command your attention, you must confront the forces inside you that resist change. The impulses, urges, emotions, and patterns that pull you back toward the familiar. In the next chapter, you will face those internal battles directly, because the war for your focus is not fought in the world around you. It is fought within, and it is a war you are ready to win. Chapter 5. The War Inside. Understanding Your Impulses. There is a war inside you, a war you've felt your entire life but never fully named. On one side stands the impulsive self, the part of you that wants comfort, ease, escape, and instant reward. On the other side stands the disciplined self, the part of you that wants growth, mastery, purpose, and long-term strength. These two forces pull at you every day, and the tension between them is not weakness. It is the battlefield where your future is decided. You feel this war in the smallest moments. The moment you wake up and reach for your phone before your breath settles. The moment you sit down to work and your mind looks for anything easier to do. The moment you promise yourself you'll stay focused, only to drift minutes later without realizing it. These moments aren't random lapses, they're impulses. And impulses are powerful because they operate faster than thought. They don't ask for permission. They move through you like reflexes programmed by years of repetition. Your impulsive self is not evil, it is ancient. It developed to keep you safe, to conserve energy, to choose the familiar path even when that path limits you. It wants to avoid discomfort, avoid risk, avoid challenge. It whispers to you with soft lies. Just relax. Do it later. You deserve a break. But that break often becomes a cycle. And that cycle becomes a lifestyle that slowly erodes your self-respect. Because every time you give in to an impulse you promised yourself you'd rise above, something inside you feels smaller. Something inside you feels betrayed. You know this feeling. It's the quiet frustration after you abandon a goal. It's the self-disgust after scrolling for an hour you didn't mean to lose. It's the disappointment of knowing you could have done more, been more, but allowed ease to win. Impulses don't just steal your time, they steal your identity. But opposite that impulsive self is the disciplined self, the version of you that wants to evolve, the one that craves structure, focus, purpose, and power. This is the self that sees beyond the moment, the self that longs for the satisfaction of a mind you can control, the self that imagines a life lived with intention instead of reaction. This part of you isn't weak, it's just quieter. It doesn't demand attention the way impulses do. It invites you instead. It asks you to grow, knowing growth comes with friction. This is the emotional duality inside you, the part of you seeking ease and the part of you seeking evolution. One wants to protect you from discomfort. The other wants to shape you through it. And every decision you make feeds one or the other. Feeding your impulses strengthens the chains that hold you back. Feeding your discipline strengthens the identity that pulls you forward. The reason this war feels so exhausting is because impulses operate fast and loud, while discipline operates slow and steady. Impulses promise dopamine, discipline promises transformation. Impulses give you relief, discipline gives you respect. And the truth is simple. The path you choose most often becomes the path you trust. If you repeatedly choose impulses, you begin believing that you are someone who cannot resist them. If you repeatedly choose discipline, even in small doses, you begin believing you are someone capable of mastery. This is why naming the enemy matters. You cannot win a war you cannot see. And the real enemy is not your mind, it's your unconscious patterns. The automatic reactions built through years of repetition, the unconscious habits you didn't choose but still obey, the impulses that fire before thought, pulling you toward the life you say you no longer want. Once you name these impulses, something powerful happens. You create distance. Instead of saying, I am distracted, you begin to say, I am feeling an impulse to distract myself. That tiny shift removes the impulse from your identity. It stops being who you are and becomes something you are observing. And what you can observe, you can control. What you can name, you can command. This awareness is the beginning of authority. When an impulse rises, you no longer feel trapped by it. You can pause. You can breathe. You can choose. The pause is where power grows. The pause is where identity shifts, because in that pause, you are no longer reacting, you are deciding. And every time you choose the disciplined self over the impulsive self, even in the smallest way, you strengthen the pathways of control. This doesn't mean the impulses disappear. They don't, at least not immediately, but they lose their dominance. They lose their ability to hijack your behavior without resistance. You start recognizing them earlier. You start interrupting their momentum faster. You start feeling the pride that comes from not letting them own you. This pride becomes the new fuel your disciplined self needs. And this is the moment identity begins restructuring. Identity is not formed through declarations. It is formed through choices. Every time you act in alignment with who you want to become, you prove something to yourself. You prove that you are capable of discipline. You prove that you can override impulse. You prove that your future is yours to shape. Slowly, your self-image changes. You stop seeing yourself as someone who constantly fails and start seeing yourself as someone who shows up, someone who decides, someone who leads. That identity becomes your internal compass. It becomes the grounding force that makes discipline easier and impulsiveness weaker. Understanding your impulses isn't just psychology, it's strategy. It is the foundation required to rebuild your mind from the inside out. And now that you've named the enemy and recognized the battlefield, you are ready for the next step, transforming your identity at the deepest level. Because to win the war inside, you must become the type of person who chooses discipline, not occasionally, but naturally. And to become that person, you must understand the power of identity, the root of all focus, all consistency, all long-term mastery. That journey begins in the next chapter. Chapter 6, Identity, the root of all focus. Everything you do flows from who you believe you are, not who you hope to be, not who you pretend to be, who you believe. Identity is the invisible script running beneath every action, every habit, every decision. And most people never question the identity they've accepted. They say, I'm scattered, I'm inconsistent, I can't focus, I always fall off. They speak these words as if they are facts, not beliefs, but the moment you declare an identity, your behavior aligns itself to prove you right. Identity shapes action, action reinforces identity, and the cycle continues until you decide to break it. You don't behave in certain ways because you're weak. You behave in certain ways because you're loyal to the identity you've repeated. A scattered identity produces scattered actions. A distracted identity produces distracted habits. When you see yourself as someone who can't stay disciplined, your mind will sabotage any attempt to become disciplined. Not because you lack ability, but because your brain seeks consistency between who you say you are and what you do. Your identity acts like a magnet, pulling your behavior toward it again and again. But here's the liberating truth. Identity is not fixed. Identity is not destiny. Identity is a story, and stories can be rewritten. You don't need to wait for some dramatic transformation to change who you believe you are. Identity shifts the moment you choose a new internal narrative. The moment you say, I am becoming focused, your brain begins searching for evidence of focus. The moment you say, I am building discipline, your mind begins aligning your choices with that becoming. Identity doesn't require perfection, it requires direction. Think of the difference between saying, I'm trying to focus, and saying, I'm a focused person building stronger habits. One keeps you in struggle, the other pulls you into alignment. One keeps your identity anchored in weakness. The other anchors it in growth. Your words matter. Your self-concept matters. The way you describe yourself shapes the way your mind behaves. The more you declare your identity with intention, the more your brain rewires itself to support it. Identity shifts through repetition. The same way distraction forms neural pathways, identity forms psychological pathways. When you repeatedly show up for yourself, even in small ways, you confirm a new truth. I follow through. When you keep a promise to yourself, you prove, I am reliable. When you choose depth over distraction, you reinforce, I am focused. These small actions are not insignificant. They are identity anchors. They stabilize your belief about who you are becoming. And identity is rhythm. Identity is repetition. Identity is the steady drumbeat beneath your transformation. You train your identity the same way you train your focus, by choosing, repeating, and reinforcing. Every moment becomes a chance to feed either the old blueprint or the new one, the blueprint of overwhelm or the blueprint of intention, the blueprint of chaos or the blueprint of clarity. And once the new identity becomes strong enough, your behavior naturally follows. This chapter is your turning point. Shifting from I am overwhelmed to I am in command, from I am easily distracted to I am learning to direct my mind, from I never stay consistent to I am becoming a person who shows up. You are not lying to yourself. You are retraining yourself. You are reclaiming authorship over your internal narrative. The story you've been living was built unintentionally. The story you're about to live will be built deliberately. Identity is powerful because it bypasses willpower. When you believe you are a certain type of person, you no longer have to force yourself to act. You act naturally. A runner doesn't struggle to run. They run because it's who they are. A disciplined person doesn't agonize over consistency. They show up because it's who they are. A focused person doesn't battle distraction every minute. They protect their attention because it aligns with their identity. Behavior follows identity like a shadow follows light. You are becoming that person now. The person who chooses intention over chaos. The person who directs their energy instead of leaking it. The person who respects their time, their mind, and their inner world. You are becoming the architect of your focus, and becoming begins with believing. Not blind belief, but grounded belief. Belief supported by the actions you take from this moment forward. And yes, there will be moments when the old identity tries to pull you back. Moments where you feel scattered, uncertain, tempted to fall into old patterns. But those moments are not proof that you haven't changed. They are proof that you are changing. Resistance shows up when you are moving away from the old and into the new. The key is not to fight the resistance, but to anchor your identity deeper. When the old story whispers, "You've always been this way," you answer, "I am no longer that person." When the old habits call you back, you remind yourself, "I choose the identity I feed." Identity becomes stronger not through motivation, but through consistency of choice, even small choices, even imperfect choices. Every time you choose the version of yourself you want to become, you strengthen that identity. Every time you take an intentional action, you carve the new blueprint deeper into your mind. And soon, the disciplined identity will become your default, not through pressure, but through repetition. This chapter is your foundation. Everything that comes next will build on this new identity. Because from here forward, you will not just act differently, you will become different. You will think, decide, focus, and show up from a place of intention. You are shifting from being someone pulled by impulses to someone guided by identity. You are stepping into the self that chooses clarity, chooses purpose, chooses mastery. And now that your identity has begun to shift, the next step becomes possible. Building rituals that reinforce this new self. Rituals that rewire your mind for consistency, focus, and strength. Rituals that turn your identity into action and your action into transformation. That journey begins in the next chapter. Chapter 7, Building Rituals that Rewire. Rituals are the architecture of a focused life. They are the invisible structures that hold your mind steady when the world tries to pull you in every direction. Most people drift because they wake up with no blueprint, no anchor, no rhythm guiding their day. They move passively, reacting to whatever arrives first, the message, the impulse, the noise. But a ritualized life is a deliberate life. It is a life where you choose your direction before the world chooses it for you. Rituals are not complicated. They don't require perfection or elaborate routines. They are simple actions repeated with intention, signals to your brain that you are in control. Think of a morning ritual, a breath, a moment of silence, a single written intention. These may seem small, but they are powerful. Because every ritual you practice becomes a neural vote for the identity you are building. Rituals rewire the brain through repetition, grounding, and clarity. Your brain craves predictability. It thrives when it knows what comes next. In a world of endless stimulation and chaos, predictability becomes psychological nourishment. When you practice daily rituals, you create stability inside yourself, even when everything outside you feels uncertain. This stability is not just emotional, it is neurological. Rituals calm your nervous system, reduce decision fatigue, and prepare your brain to enter focused states more easily. They create mental safety, and from safety grows strength. Contrast the person who begins their day with intention versus the person who wakes up and immediately grabs their phone. One signals ownership, the other signals surrender. One builds pathways of clarity, the other reinforces pathways of chaos. A ritual is not about the activity, it is about the message behind the activity. Every ritual whispers, "This is who I am becoming," and the brain listens. Rituals also eliminate the friction that stops most people from living with focus. Without rituals, every action requires willpower. With rituals, actions move from effort to identity. You no longer struggle to find momentum. The momentum is built into your day. You no longer fight to force discipline. Discipline becomes embedded in your rhythms. This is why rituals are transformative. They automate the behaviors that once felt impossible. Consider a simple grounding ritual. 1 minute of stillness before you begin any meaningful task. 1 minute to breathe, to settle, to return to center. At first, it feels insignificant, but over time, that minute becomes a cue that tells your brain it's time to focus. It becomes an anchor that transitions you from noise to clarity. The more you repeat it, the more automatic the transition becomes. This is rewiring in real time. Or imagine a nightly ritual. 5 minutes reviewing your day and realigning with your goals. Not to judge yourself, but to observe. To witness your behavior without shame or excuses. This practice strengthens self-awareness, and self-awareness strengthens discipline. When you take time each night to reflect, you teach your brain to learn from itself. You develop internal guidance rather than letting impulses dictate your direction. Rituals are declarations of identity. When you follow a ritual, you are saying, "This is who I am now." And even if your old patterns try to whisper otherwise, the consistency of your rituals speaks louder. You are no longer someone who drifts. You're no longer someone who reacts. You are someone who chooses, someone who builds, someone who follows through. This shift from passive living to deliberate ritualized living is one of the greatest transformations you can make. A passive life is controlled by impulses. A ritualized life is controlled by intention. A passive life is chaotic. A ritualized life is stable. A passive life leaves you mentally scattered. A ritualized life trains your mind toward clarity. And every ritual becomes a building block in the architecture of your new identity. But rituals are not just about structure. They are about emotional grounding. When your life has rhythm, your emotions have space to settle. When your days have anchors, stress has less power over you. Rituals create pockets of stillness where your mind can breathe, reset, and heal. These pockets accumulate. They create emotional resilience. They build the foundation for calm that does not collapse under pressure. You are not creating rituals to restrict yourself. You are creating rituals to free yourself from decision fatigue, from mental chaos, from the endless loop of reacting instead of choosing. A ritual is not a chore, it is a declaration that your time matters, your energy matters, your direction matters, and most importantly, your identity matters. Start with one ritual, something small enough that you cannot avoid it, something meaningful enough that you feel its impact. Over time, add more. Let them stack. Let them form the scaffolding of your new mind. Ritual by ritual, you begin to build a life that reflects the person you are becoming, not the person you once were. You don't need to change everything at once. You need to create consistent cues that shape your brain toward mastery. Rituals prepare you for deeper internal work. They stabilize your mind so you can confront the impulses, fears, and emotional storms inside you without being overwhelmed. They create the mental space required for transformation, and they prove something essential. You can guide your mind. You can direct your thoughts. You can engineer your identity from the inside out. This chapter marks the shift from intention to action, from understanding your identity to living it through consistent practice. And now that your life has begun to take form through deliberate rituals, you are ready for the next stage, the discipline of stillness. Because the true power of focus does not come from doing more. It comes from learning how to sit inside silence without running from yourself. That journey begins now. Chapter 8. The Discipline of Stillness. Stillness is the backbone of focus. It is the quiet center of a powerful mind. Yet in a world addicted to speed, stillness feels unnatural, almost threatening. When you sit in silence with no distractions and nowhere to run, you confront the truth of your own thoughts. You see the chaos, the noise, the impulses, the fears. And for most people, that confrontation feels unbearable. That's why they avoid stillness. That's why they fill silence with stimulation. But stillness is not the enemy. Stillness is the doorway to mastery. A restless mind cannot hide in silence. The moment you stop moving, the internal noise rises. Old worries surface. Unfinished thoughts return. Lingering tension finally demands to be felt. This is why stillness feels uncomfortable. It exposes what you've ignored. But exposure is not punishment. Exposure is healing. Silence reveals the knots in your mind so you can untie them. The chaos you hear in stillness is not new. It has always been there. You simply never slowed down long enough to notice. Most people live in a constant state of mental sprinting. They jump from task to task, app to app, thought to thought, without ever pausing to breathe. Their minds become like engines running red hot, always pushing, never resting. A restless mind is reactive, impatient, easily overwhelmed. It chases stimulation because stimulation prevents introspection. But the trained mind, the patient, disciplined mind, operates differently. It isn't afraid of silence. It uses silence to sharpen itself. It treats stillness like a weapon. Imagine a lake. When the water is disturbed, you can't see beneath the surface. But when the water becomes still, everything becomes clear. Stillness does the same for your mind. When you anchor yourself in silence, your thoughts settle. Your emotions become visible. Your intentions rise to the surface. What once felt chaotic becomes understandable. What once felt overwhelming becomes manageable. Stillness transforms confusion into clarity, but stillness is not passive. Stillness is discipline. Stillness is the deliberate act of holding your ground while your impulses try to pull you away. When you sit in silence, your mind will resist. It will demand stimulation. It will beg for distraction. It will try to convince you that stillness is a waste of time. This resistance is proof that stillness is exactly what you need, because the muscles that shake under weight are the ones that are getting stronger. The same is true for the mind. To sit in stillness is to train your attention like an athlete trains their body. Each moment you resist distraction, you strengthen your focus. Each moment you breathe through discomfort, you deepen your patience. Each moment you witness your thoughts without reacting, you grow your control. Stillness builds the mental muscles required for mastery: awareness, restraint, endurance, clarity. Cinematic stillness is powerful. Picture a warrior before a battle, calm, centered, composed. Not because nothing is happening around them, but because everything is grounded inside them. That is the discipline you are building. Stillness isn't about escaping the world, it's about preparing for it. The stronger your inner stillness, the harder it becomes for life to shake you. Stillness becomes your shield. Stillness becomes your strategy. Stillness becomes your strength. Many people mistake stillness for weakness. They believe action is strength and silence is surrender. But uncontrolled action is not strength. It is panic. It is reaction. True power comes from the ability to pause, to observe, to choose your next move instead of rushing into it. Stillness gives you the space to think before you act, to feel before you break, to breathe before you drown. Stillness is not the absence of movement. It is the mastery of movement. When you sit in silence, you begin to understand the landscape of your own mind. You notice patterns, how quickly your thoughts jump, how rapidly your emotions shift, how intensely your impulses fire. This awareness is essential. You cannot master what you cannot see. You cannot guide what you cannot understand. Stillness brings understanding. It reveals the storms brewing inside you. And once you see the storm, you can learn to navigate it. Because emotional storms are inevitable. Stress, anxiety, frustration, anger, these waves rise and fall throughout your life. Most people drown because they were never taught how to stay calm in the water. They panic. They fight the wave. They let emotion take control. But the disciplined mind learns something different. When the storm hits, stillness becomes your anchor. Stillness keeps you from reacting blindly. Stillness allows you to let the wave pass instead of pulling you under. Stillness transforms emotional chaos into manageable energy. And this is why stillness is not optional on the path to mastery. It is foundational. You cannot build a focused life on a restless mind. You cannot build discipline on emotional instability. You cannot build clarity on constant noise. Stillness is the training ground where you develop the awareness, patience, and self-control required for every other skill. Stillness also strengthens identity. When you sit with yourself, with no title, no distractions, no noise, you are forced to confront who you truly are. You begin to see the gap between your intentions and your actions. You begin to feel the difference between the self you present and the self you hide. This awareness is uncomfortable but necessary, because only when you see the truth can you reshape it. Stillness gives you the courage to meet yourself honestly. And once you learn to sit in silence, you unlock a new level of internal authority. You no longer chase every impulse. You no longer fear every emotion. You no longer collapse under pressure. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to choose instead of drift. You begin to lead your mind instead of being led by it. Stillness becomes your discipline. Stillness becomes your strength. Now that you have learned the weapon of stillness, you are ready for the next stage, understanding and mastering emotional waves. Because the true test of focus is not found in quiet moments, it is found in the storm. And in the next chapter, you will learn how to face that storm with power, clarity, and unwavering calm. Chapter 9, Mastering Emotional Waves. Your emotions are not your enemy. They are energy, raw, powerful, electric. Energy that can either scatter your mind or sharpen it. Energy that can either drown you in chaos or lift you into clarity. The problem isn't emotion itself. The problem is what happens when you don't know how to guide it. A mind consumed by unmanaged emotion becomes a storm. A mind trained to channel emotion becomes a force of nature. Every emotional wave has the power to disrupt your focus. Stress, frustration, anxiety, anger. Each one pulls your attention away from what matters. When fear rises, your thoughts spiral. When stress spikes, your clarity collapses. When anger hits, your discipline dissolves. Not because you are weak, but because emotion demands space. It demands to be felt. it demands to be acknowledged. When ignored, it hijacks your mind. When understood, it empowers you. The first step to mastering emotional waves is realizing this truth. Emotions are signals, not sentences. They tell you what needs attention, but they do not dictate your destiny. A wave rises, peaks, and falls. No emotion, no matter how intense, stays forever. But most people panic in the rise. They fight the wave, tighten their chest, resist the feeling, and in doing so, amplify the chaos. What you resist intensifies. What you observe transforms. Imagine standing in the ocean. A wave approaches. If you tense up, it slams into you. If you try to outrun it, it drags you under. But if you stand grounded and let the wave pass through you, you remain upright. You are shaken maybe, but not destroyed. This is emotional mastery, understanding that the wave is temporary, but your stability can be permanent. Emotions become dangerous only when they control your actions. Stress convinces you to abandon difficult tasks. Anxiety tells you to avoid challenges that matter. Anger pushes you toward impulsive decisions that sabotage your progress. These emotional reactions fracture attention and drain discipline. Yet the same emotions, when managed, become fuel. Stress becomes focus. Anxiety becomes awareness. Anger becomes determination. Emotions, when directed, sharpen your mind. This is the reframe that changes everything. Your emotions are energy, not evidence. Stress isn't proof that you're failing. It's proof that something important is happening. Anxiety isn't evidence of weakness. It's evidence of care, investment, and desire for outcome. Even fear is not a stop sign. It's a signal that you've stepped outside your old identity and into growth. When you reinterpret emotional waves, you stop fearing them. You start guiding them. Think of stress like fire. Uncontrolled, it destroys. Directed, it forges steel. Your mind is that steel. Each emotional surge is a chance to strengthen it. When stress rises, instead of retreating, anchor yourself in stillness. When anxiety tightens your chest, breathe into it rather than fight it. When frustration spikes, channel it into disciplined motion instead of chaotic reaction. These small shifts reshape your relationship with emotion. You are not meant to eliminate emotion, you are meant to lead it, to direct the energy toward your purpose, to turn fear into focus, stress into clarity, and tension into presence. This is the essence of emotional mastery. You are no longer the passenger in your inner world. You are the navigator. But emotional mastery requires awareness. You cannot guide what you cannot see. You must learn to recognize the early signs of emotional waves, the tightening in your shoulders, the racing in your mind, the urge to escape into distraction. These signals are not warnings. They are opportunities to practice control. When you catch the wave early, you can redirect it before it takes over. This is why the discipline of stillness matters. Stillness teaches you to observe without reacting. Stillness teaches you to breathe instead of panic. Stillness teaches you to hold your ground when your emotions surge. The work you did in the last chapter builds the foundation for this one. Stillness is the training ground. Emotional waves are the battlefield. When you combine both, you become unshakable. Emotions do not have to break your focus. They can deepen it. They can intensify your presence. They can push you into a level of awareness most people never experience. The key is learning to let the wave move through you without losing your direction. When you no longer fear emotion, emotion no longer controls you. It becomes another tool, another layer of energy guiding your evolution. But emotional mastery is not just internal, it is also shaped by the world you place yourself in. Your environment amplifies or reduces emotional chaos. A cluttered room creates a cluttered mind. A chaotic digital space creates a chaotic nervous system. A disorganized schedule creates disorganized emotions. You cannot expect to manage internal storms while living in external disorder. Your environment must become your ally, a space that supports calm, a space that reinforces identity, a space that reduces friction and increases clarity. When your environment is intentional, emotional stability becomes easier. Focus becomes natural. Discipline becomes a byproduct of design, not constant struggle. The next chapter will teach you how to build that environment, the silent sculptor of your mind. For now, understand this. Emotional waves are not obstacles on your path to focus. They are part of the training. They are part of the journey. Every wave you face is an invitation to grow stronger, steadier, clearer. Do not run from them. Do not be afraid of them. Stand inside them. Let them rise. Let them fall. And with every wave you master, you build a mind capable of extraordinary focus and unstoppable discipline. You are not here to suppress emotion. You are here to command it. And your training continues in the environment you create next. Chapter 10. Your Environment, the Silent Sculptor of Your Mind. Your environment is shaping you even when you're not paying attention. It is the silent sculptor of your mind, the force that molds your habits, your focus, your energy, and your identity without asking for permission. Most people try to change their lives through willpower alone, never realizing that their surroundings are quietly steering their behavior. But the truth is simple. Clutter breeds chaos. Order breeds clarity. The space around you becomes the space within you. Look at any area of your life where you feel scattered, unfocused, or inconsistent, and you will almost always find an environment that feeds the problem. A messy desk invites a messy mind. A chaotic room keeps your nervous system on edge. A phone filled with notifications keeps your brain trained for distraction. None of this is accidental. Your environment sets the default, and your mind adapts to whatever that default is. If your surroundings constantly pull you into noise, you will struggle to create clarity. If your digital spaces bombard you with stimulation, you will fight distraction every minute of your day. But if your environment supports your goals, your mind rises to meet them. You are not weak for struggling in a chaotic space. You are simply responding to the cues around you. When you change the cues, you change the behavior. When you change the behavior, you change the identity. Your environment can either drain willpower or build it. Most people live in spaces that drain them. They wake up to clutter. They start their day by reaching for their phone. They work in disorganized rooms surrounded by unfinished tasks, reminders of stress, and visual noise. These environments leak energy. They create micro-tension, micro-distractions, micro-anxiety. You don't notice the leak in the moment, but by the end of the day, you feel it. You feel mentally exhausted, not because you worked too hard, but because your surroundings worked against you. But when your environment is intentional, it becomes a source of strength. A clean desk signals focus. A quiet room signals calm. A phone with notifications disables signals control. Your brain reads these signals automatically. You don't need to force discipline. It arises naturally from the cues around you. An intentional environment removes friction. It reduces decision fatigue. It strengthens your mental foundation before your day even begins. Think of your environment as a script. Every object, every sound, every digital pattern is a line in that script. If the script tells you to drift, you drift. If the script tells you to rise, you rise. You must become the author of that script. You must decide what story your environment tells. Your surroundings should reflect your identity, not contradict it. If you want to become a focused person, you must live in a focused space. If you want to become a disciplined person, you must live in a disciplined space. Radical responsibility means acknowledging that you designed your environment, consciously or unconsciously, and you have the power to redesign it. This is not about perfection. It is about alignment. Your space should align with your intention. Your digital world should align with your growth. Your surroundings should make your success easier, not harder. Start with the physical. Remove what drains you. Add what grounds you. When you clear clutter, you clear cognitive load. When you organize your space, you organize your mind. When your surroundings are simple, your thoughts become sharper. Order is not about aesthetics. It is about psychology. It is about creating space where your mind can breathe. Then move to the digital. Your phone, your laptop, your feeds, these are environments too. And for many people, they are the most toxic. Notifications hijack your dopamine system. Algorithms compete for your attention. Apps are designed to keep you hooked, not focused. If you do not take command of your digital environment, it will take command of you. Disable what distracts you. Delete what drains you. Rearrange your digital space so it aligns with who you want to become. Create a home screen that signals purpose, not chaos. Curate your feeds to inspire you, not scatter you. Every tap, every swipe, every scroll becomes a vote for the identity you are reinforcing. Your digital environment should build willpower, not erode it. And then consider your emotional environment, the people, conversations, and energies that surround you daily. Some environments elevate your discipline. Others sabotage it. Some people support your evolution. Others pull you back into old patterns. You don't need to eliminate everyone who doesn't align, but you must be aware of the emotional atmosphere you absorb. Your relationships influence your mindset. Your conversations influence your focus. Your social environment influences your identity. When you take responsibility for your environment, you take responsibility for your mind. You stop relying on willpower to fight battles that your surroundings could have prevented. You stop trying to force discipline in spaces designed for distraction. You stop blaming yourself for failing in conditions no one could thrive in. You begin designing your life from the outside in, shaping your physical, digital, and emotional world to support the person you are becoming. Because behavior does not happen in a vacuum. Behavior happens in context. Change the context, and you accelerate the transformation. Your environment becomes your assistant, your mentor, your reminder, your anchor. It becomes the silent partner in your growth. The space around you begins shaping your identity in the direction you choose. This chapter prepares you for the next evolution, reprogramming your daily behaviors at scale. Now that your environment supports your focus, you will learn how repetition, momentum, and micro wins build unstoppable discipline. The world around you is aligned. Now it's time to align your actions. Chapter 11. Repetition, Momentum, and the Power of Micro Wins. Momentum is not magic. It is not a gift reserved for the disciplined few. Momentum is manufactured, built through small, consistent actions, repeated long enough to reshape the way you think, the way you act, and the way you believe in yourself. Most people never experience the true force of momentum because they chase perfection instead of progress. They wait for motivation instead of building habits. They aim for massive breakthroughs while ignoring the tiny wins that actually create transformation. But the brain doesn't change through grand gestures. It changes through repetition, micro wins stacked day after day until they form an identity impossible to shake. A micro win is any action, no matter how small, that moves you in the direction of your goals. One focused minute, one completed task, one intentional breath, one moment where you choose discipline over impulse. These wins may seem insignificant, but to your brain, they are everything. Every micro win releases a small surge of dopamine, not the chaotic, addictive dopamine of distraction, but the steady, empowering dopamine of progress. This is the dopamine that teaches your brain, I can do this, I follow through, I move toward my goals. Over time, these micro signals build a new expectation: success. Your brain expects whatever you repeat. If you repeatedly quit, your brain expects quitting. If you repeatedly delay, your brain expects procrastination. If you repeatedly escape into distraction, your brain expects avoidance. This is why starting feels so hard. Your brain is following its old programming. It remembers the times you didn't show up. It remembers the moments you retreated. But when you stack micro wins, you override that history. You write a new script. You prove to your brain that you are capable of forward motion. Contrast this with the old pattern, the cycle of stopping and starting, promising and breaking, trying and abandoning. Each time you gave up, you taught your brain to expect collapse. Each time you delayed, you reinforced the identity of someone who doesn't finish. And nothing kills momentum faster than self-doubt. When you don't trust yourself to follow through, even the simplest goals feel heavy. But micro wins rebuild that trust. They rebuild the bridge between intention and action. They give you evidence that you are becoming someone reliable, someone disciplined, someone powerful. Momentum grows the same way a spark becomes a flame. It begins small, almost invisible. One win, then another, and suddenly the flame becomes self-sustaining. You stop needing motivation because your actions themselves generate energy. You stop negotiating with yourself because your identity has shifted. You stop questioning if you can do it because your behavior proves you already are doing it. Momentum is the engine of a disciplined life, and micro wins are the fuel. Repetition is the secret behind all mastery. The brain rewires through consistent exposure. Neurons that fire together wire together. When you repeat a behavior, the neural pathway becomes stronger, faster, more automatic. What once required effort becomes natural. What once felt difficult becomes familiar. This is why disciplined people appear superhuman. They aren't working harder in the moment. They worked consistently when the moment was small. They trained their brain through repetition until excellence became automatic. Think about the power of one repeated action, one daily habit, one commitment kept. Over time, it compounds. The micro win becomes a micro pattern. The micro pattern becomes a micro identity. And that micro identity becomes the foundation for extraordinary growth. You don't need to overhaul your life overnight. You just need to master the art of showing up in small ways, consistently, without waiting for permission or perfect conditions. Momentum also protects you from emotional turbulence. When you have forward motion, stress doesn't derail you, it fuels you. Anxiety doesn't freeze you, it sharpens you. Doubt doesn't stop you, it challenges you. This is the gift of momentum. It keeps you moving even when you don't feel like moving. It carries you across moments of friction and into moments of flow. A disciplined life is not built on constant motivation. It is built on momentum you manufactured through micro wins. But micro wins require awareness. You must notice them. You must celebrate them. You must give them the psychological weight they deserve. When you acknowledge each win, your brain reinforces the pathway. When you ignore them, the impact weakens. This is why reflection matters. Each day, when you look back and name your wins, no matter how small, you strengthen your identity as someone who progresses, someone who grows, someone who keeps going. This is the opposite of the old pattern. The old pattern was built on self-criticism and unrealistic expectations. You dismissed small wins and magnified small failures. You judged your progress harshly while ignoring your effort. That mindset destroyed momentum before it had a chance to form. But now you choose a new rhythm, a rhythm of recognition, a rhythm of consistency, a rhythm of celebrating growth instead of punishing imperfection. Momentum is a psychological shift as much as a behavioral one. When you experience even a small streak of progress, your confidence expands, your appetite for discipline grows, your desire for excellence increases. Suddenly, the behaviors that once felt impossible begin to feel inevitable. This is the power of compounding effort. Each micro win multiplies the next. And soon you aren't pushing yourself anymore. You're being pulled by the identity you've built. And this momentum is preparing you for something bigger, long-term rewiring. Because micro wins don't just create behavioral change, they create structural change in the brain. They reshape how you process effort, how you handle setbacks, how you respond to challenges. They recondition your neural pathways to expect follow-through instead of failure. They build a mind designed for mastery rather than survival. In the next chapter, you will take this momentum and use it to break the deeper loops inside you. The old patterns, the old habits, the old identities that kept you trapped. You are no longer someone who quits early. You are someone who builds steadily, someone who creates momentum, someone who manufactures their own strength. And now you're ready to dismantle the loops that once defined you. Chapter 12. Breaking the Old Loops. Your life is shaped by loops, patterns of thought, emotion, and behavior that repeat until they become invisible. These loops determine how you react, how you focus, how you rise, and how you fall. Some loops empower you, but many more quietly drain your life force, keeping you trapped in cycles of distraction, stress, doubt, and self-sabotage. You don't stay stuck because you're weak. You stay stuck because your mind is following a script you haven't rewritten yet. Old loops run automatically until you decide to break them. An old loop begins the moment you feel discomfort. A tiny spark of stress appears, and before you even notice, your mind seeks escape. Maybe you reach for your phone. Maybe you drift into distraction. Maybe you procrastinate, telling yourself you'll try again later. The loop completes, and the brain learns that avoidance brings relief. The next time discomfort arises, the loop activates faster. Soon it becomes a reflex. You aren't choosing distraction, you are obeying conditioning. Breaking the old loop starts with a single skill: awareness. You cannot change a loop you cannot see, and most of your loops operate in silence, beneath conscious thought, guiding you automatically. But once you shine light on a loop, the illusion breaks. You realize it is not fate. It is habit. It is not who you are. It is what you've repeatedly rehearsed. Awareness is the key that unlocks the pattern and gives you the power to redirect it. Contrast your old loops with the new ones you're building. Old loops drain energy. New loops restore power. Old loops leave you scattered. New loops return you to clarity. Old loops keep you cycling through the same frustrations. New loops move you through discomfort into mastery. The difference isn't willpower, it's recognition. Once you understand the architecture of your loops, you can interrupt them before they run their course. Here's how a loop breaks. The moment you feel the impulse to escape, pause. The pause is your weapon. The pause is the disruption. The pause interrupts the automatic flow. In that pause, you reclaim authority. You create space between impulse and action. And in that space, you decide whether to follow the old loop or build a new one. You may not win every moment at first, but the pause itself is victory. The pause weakens the old circuitry and strengthens new pathways. Many people try to break loops with brute force, pushing against impulses with sheer will. But willpower is unreliable because it's easily drained. Breaking loops is not about force, it is about observation. When you watch an impulse rise, when you feel it without obeying it, something powerful happens. The loop loses its grip. You begin to understand the mechanics behind your behavior. You begin to see the emotions that trigger your patterns. You begin to guide your mind instead of resisting it. Your old loops were formed in moments of unconsciousness. Your new loops will be formed in moments of consciousness. Every time you choose to work through discomfort instead of fleeing it, you strengthen the loop of persistence. Every time you complete a task instead of abandoning it, you strengthen the loop of follow-through. Every time you breathe through emotional tension instead of reacting, you strengthen the loop of emotional mastery. These choices accumulate. They carve new pathways. They create a mind capable of consistency. Breaking loops also requires honesty. You must acknowledge the behaviors that keep you stuck, not with judgment, but with clarity. Self-sabotage thrives in denial. But when you name your patterns, you disarm them. You stop pretending that distraction is harmless. You stop pretending procrastination is accidental. You stop pretending old habits are inevitable. You tell the truth. These loops once protected you, but now they limit you. And acknowledging that truth is how transformation begins. Some loops formed because they were easier than facing your real emotions. Some formed because they gave you temporary relief. Some formed because you didn't yet understand your mind. But now you do. And with awareness comes responsibility. You are no longer a passive participant in your patterns. You are the architect. The loops you choose from here forward will shape the person you become. Breaking loops does not mean never feeling impulses again. It means learning to rise above them. It means watching them without obeying them. It means choosing the path aligned with your identity, not your old conditioning. Every loop you break strengthens your inner authority. Every loop you rebuild deepens your discipline. Every loop you transform becomes a foundation for the next version of you. But breaking loops is only the first half of the equation. You must also replace them with new empowered loops. If you simply remove an old pattern without installing a new one, the mind drifts into confusion. Replace avoidance with action. Replace chaos with clarity. Replace hesitation with initiation. Replace old self-talk with identity-based language. These new loops become the default, the rhythm, the expectation your mind follows. And now you face the ultimate challenge: consistency. Breaking loops once is a spark. Breaking loops repeatedly is transformation. Consistency is what cements the new identity. Consistency is what rewires the brain at scale. Consistency is what turns micro wins into unstoppable momentum. The next chapter will show you how to make discipline not a momentary decision, but a lifestyle. How to hardwire your new identity so deeply that the old loops can never pull you back again. You are not undoing your past. You are rewriting your future, and it begins now. Chapter 13, Consistency, the doorway to the new self. Consistency is where most people fall apart. Not because they lack potential, not because they lack desire, but because consistency requires something the world rarely teaches: the willingness to show up when your emotions don't want to, the willingness to push through resistance, the willingness to honor your identity even on the days when everything inside you fights against your progress. Consistency is not glamorous. It is not loud. It is a quiet daily declaration of who you choose to be. The emotional battle with consistency is real. At first, the friction feels overwhelming. You want results now, but results come slowly. You want ease, but growth requires discomfort. You want clarity, yet confusion still whispers in your mind. The old self keeps calling you back, pulling you toward familiar habits, familiar distractions, familiar escapes. And every time you face this battle, you stand at the threshold between your former identity and the identity you are building. Motivation won't carry you across that threshold. Motivation is a spark, not a foundation. It rises in moments of inspiration and collapses when stress appears. It energizes you when conditions are perfect and abandons you when life becomes heavy. If you rely on motivation, your progress will always be fragile, because motivation reacts to emotion, but consistency reacts to identity. Consistency becomes solid only when it is rooted in who you believe yourself to be. When you act because this is what someone like me does, not because you feel like doing it, identity-driven discipline is stronger than emotion. Identity-driven actions become automatic, predictable, and stable. They don't fluctuate with mood or circumstance. They anchor you. They shape you. They turn effort into embodiment. Think of consistency as the bridge between two selves: the self you were, the one scattered, overwhelmed, driven by impulse, and the self you're becoming, the one focused, intentional, resilient. You cannot jump from one side to the other in a single leap. You must walk the bridge step by step, day by day, choice by choice. Every consistent action moves you forward. Every lapse pulls you back. And the bridge is long, but it is unbreakable when you commit to crossing it. The resistance you feel is not a sign of failure. It is the sign of transformation. Resistance appears because you are disrupting old patterns. Doubt appears because you are entering unfamiliar territory. Fatigue appears because your brain is rewiring itself. These discomforts are not obstacles. They are symptoms of growth. They are proof you are moving beyond the limits of your old identity And here is the truth most people never realize. Consistency doesn't get easier because conditions improve. Consistency gets easier because you improve. Your identity strengthens. Your habits stabilize. Your emotional tolerance increases. Over time, what once felt impossible becomes natural. The friction decreases, not because the path changes, but because you do. But in the beginning, you must expect the battle. You must expect mornings where your mind argues with you. You must expect moments when quitting feels reasonable. You must expect internal negotiation, temptation, and mental fatigue. This is the phase where most people stop. They mistake resistance for a signal to retreat. But the resistance is actually the doorway. The moment you push through it, the new self begins to take shape. Consistency also frees you from the chaos of decision fatigue. When your actions become routine, your mind stops wrestling with the constant question of, should I or shouldn't I? The answer becomes built into your identity. You show up because that's who you are now. You practice discipline because that's who you've chosen to become. Consistency simplifies your life by eliminating the internal debate that once drained your energy. This shift from emotional decision-making to identity-driven commitment is the foundation of every transformation. It is how you break the cycle of self-doubt, procrastination, and inconsistency. It is how you build self-respect, not by achieving enormous goals, but by consistently keeping small promises to yourself. Every kept promise strengthens your identity. Every broken promise weakens it. This is why consistency is not just a habit, it is a relationship with your own potential. And as you develop this relationship, something incredible happens. Momentum returns. You stop feeling like you are pushing yourself uphill. Each day feels slightly lighter. The actions that once required discipline begin to feel natural. The habits that once felt forced begin to feel like home. You become someone who moves forward even in discomfort, someone who stays grounded even in chaos, someone who shows up even when the world pulls at you. Consistency is not about perfection. You will have off days. You will break routines. You will falter. But breaking consistency doesn't destroy your identity unless you let it. What matters is what you do next. The new self does not collapse after one misstep. The new self recalibrates, returns, recommits. Consistency is not measured by never failing. It is measured by how quickly you come back. The person you're becoming is not built through grand moments of willpower. They are built through daily alignment with your deepest values and intentions. They are built through discipline in the mundane, through strength in the small moments, through choice in the face of resistance. Consistency is the sculptor of character, the refiner of identity, the architect of mastery. When you embrace consistency, you step into a new level of self-respect. You stop negotiating with your old patterns. You stop expecting life to change without you changing first. You stop hoping for discipline and start embodying it. This embodiment is what prepares you for the next stage of transformation, becoming unshakable. Because once consistency takes root, something extraordinary becomes possible. The creation of a mind that does not bend under pressure, a mind that stays centered in storms, a mind that remains aligned with its purpose no matter what life throws your way. The journey toward that unshakable mind begins in the next chapter. Chapter 14, The Calm in the Storm, Returning to Center. True mastery isn't proven in quiet moments. It isn't revealed on peaceful days or when everything aligns perfectly. Mastery emerges in the storm, in the chaos, in the pressure, in the moments where life strikes hard and fast. Anyone can appear composed when nothing is testing them, but the person you are becoming learns to remain centered even as the world shakes around you. This is the essence of inner calm, not the absence of storms, but the ability to stand unshaken within them. Life will throw waves at you, unexpected challenges, emotional surges, demands you didn't see coming. The old self gets swept away instantly. The old mind panics, spirals, fights the wave, and loses control. But the trained mind, the disciplined mind, the mind you have been building, learns to anchor itself. You become like a lighthouse in violent waters, still, steady, unbroken. Lightning strikes, winds roar, waves crash, but your foundation holds. This is the calm in the storm. Picture the storm around you. Noise everywhere, obligations piling up, emotions rising. Most people tighten their shoulders, shorten their breath, and let anxiety take the wheel. Their thoughts scatter. Their presence dissolves. Their identity collapses into survival mode. But not you, not anymore. You have learned too much. You have built too deeply. You have practiced stillness, awareness, discipline, and identity. Now the storm becomes the training ground where your strength reveals itself. Your calm is not passive. Your calm is active, intentional, powerful. It is a decision you make each time life demands more than you expected. You choose not to react impulsively. You choose not to be swallowed by fear. You choose to return to center. And that center is always available. It exists beneath the noise. It exists beneath the emotion. It exists beneath the surface of every moment, waiting for you to step back into it. Returning to center begins with breath. The breath is your anchor, your lifeline, your reset button. In chaos, the mind races, but the breath slows. When you breathe fully, deeply, intentionally, your nervous system shifts, your clarity returns, your emotions settle. The storm outside may continue, but the storm inside begins to calm. This is how you reclaim command, not by controlling the world, but by controlling your internal state within the world. External unpredictability will never disappear. Life does not promise certainty. It does not promise smooth paths or perfect timing, but internal stability is something you can build, something you can train, something you can return to again and again. When you have internal stability, chaos loses its power. You stop being thrown off course by every unexpected turn. You stop living at the mercy of circumstances. You move through difficulty with a quiet confidence that comes from knowing you will not break. This inner calm is not the absence of emotion. It is the mastery of it. You still feel stress, but it no longer controls you. You still feel fear, but you no longer obey it. You still feel pressure, but it no longer cracks your identity. Instead, you learn to let emotion move through you like waves passing beneath a stable boat. The wave rises, the wave falls, but you remain grounded. You remain present. You remain centered. The calm in the storm is built through repetition. Every time you pause instead of panic, the calm strengthens. Every time you breathe instead of break, the calm deepens. Every time you choose clarity over chaos, the calm becomes part of your identity. Over time, the storms that once overwhelmed you begin to feel smaller, not because the storms changed, but because you did. And here is the secret you've earned. Inner calm is not weakness, it is power. The world teaches urgency, reactivity, and overstimulation. But calm is rebellion. Calm is clarity. Calm is strength disguised as softness. Calm lets you think when others freeze. Calm lets you act when others hesitate. Calm lets you navigate challenges with precision instead of desperation. Calm is your competitive advantage in a world addicted to chaos. As you develop this calm, something extraordinary happens. Your presence changes. People feel it. Your energy becomes grounded, steady, dependable. You stop being pulled into drama. You stop absorbing other people's tension. You stop taking on chaos that was never yours to carry. Your boundaries strengthen. Your mind becomes clearer. Your intuition sharpens. You move from reactivity to wisdom. And inside this calm, you find something deeper: alignment. You begin to act from who you are becoming, not who you were. You begin to make decisions from vision rather than fear. You begin to trust yourself, truly trust yourself. This trust is the foundation of the unshakable mind. The unshakable mind does not crumble when life intensifies. The unshakable mind expands. The storm no longer intimidates you because you understand its purpose. Storms reveal the strength of your roots. Storms test the stability you've built. Storms show you where you remain reactive and where you have grown resilient. Without storms, you would never discover how capable you are. Without storms, mastery remains theory. With storms, mastery becomes embodied truth. This chapter marks the emotional buildup toward your final evolution. You have learned stillness. You have learned discipline. You have learned identity. You have learned to rewire your patterns, guide your impulses, and stabilize your emotional waves. Now you understand how to remain grounded in turbulence. You stand at the edge of something extraordinary, a mind that cannot be broken, a center that cannot be shaken, a self that cannot be undone. In the next chapter, you complete the transformation. You step into the final stage of your evolution, the unshakable mind. Chapter 15, The Unshakable Mind, 1,000 words. Your journey has brought you here, to the threshold of the unshakable mind. This is the version of you forged through stillness, discipline, repetition, and truth. You have learned to witness your impulses, redirect your emotions, and stand centered even when the world tries to pull you apart. Now the scattered self you once carried fades, replaced by a grounded identity built on intention. You are no longer drifting through life. You are directing it. You are stepping into a new internal authority. The unshakable mind is not a mind without challenge. It is a mind that refuses to collapse under challenge. It is a mind that meets adversity with clarity instead of panic, resistance instead of surrender, breath instead of chaos. The person you were reacted to everything instantly, pulled by emotion and environment. The person you are now responds with awareness, anchored in identity. This contrast is the proof of your transformation. You once lived in loops of distraction. You once surrendered your attention to every impulse, every notification, every internal storm. Your life felt reactive because your mind was untrained. But now you have witnessed the architecture of your thoughts. You have learned how your brain builds focus and how it breaks it. You have broken old patterns and installed new ones. You have proven that awareness is the lever that reshapes destiny. Your new identity is not fragile. It is not dependent on mood or convenience. It is built on repetition, on micro wins, on the steady reinforcement of who you are becoming. You no longer wait for perfect conditions. You no longer rely on fleeting motivation. You move because movement is aligned with your truth. The disciplined mind you have built is now the compass guiding your actions. And yet the unshakable mind is deeper than discipline. It is the merging of clarity, emotional mastery, and identity. You have learned to breathe through storms, to witness waves of emotion without drowning, to stand in discomfort without escaping. You have learned that calm is not a luxury. It is a skill, a weapon, a state of inner readiness that remains intact even when chaos surrounds you. You are no longer intimidated by pressure. Pressure now sharpens you. Challenges no longer scatter your focus. They reveal your training. You meet adversity with intention, not avoidance. You meet uncertainty with breath, not panic. You meet emotional surges with awareness, not surrender. This is who you have become, someone who does not crumble in storms, but someone who grows stronger because of them. The unshakable mind is not rigid. It is flexible, adaptable, responsive. It does not resist reality. It works with it. It bends without breaking. It adjusts without losing integrity. This is what makes you unstoppable. Your strength is no longer force. Your strength is stability. You do not chase control through tension. You find control through presence, through awareness, through the quiet certainty that you can handle whatever comes. Look back at who you once were: reactive, overwhelmed, scattered, uncertain. You lived according to impulses you didn't understand. You avoided silence because silence exposed truth. You ran from emotion because emotion felt overpowering. But look at you now. You stand in full ownership of your mind. You understand your patterns. You break loops intentionally. You build momentum deliberately. You act with conviction instead of confusion. You are centered. You are disciplined. You are clear. You are calm. You are powerful. This is not a temporary state. It is your new baseline. A mind once fractured, now unified. A mind once scattered, now steady. A mind once afraid of its own storms, now anchored in them. This is your evolution. This is the identity you earn through practice, through awareness, through relentless honesty with yourself. But hear this clearly. This is not the end. This is the beginning. The unshakable mind is not a final destination. It is a foundation, a launch point, a new way of existing in the world. From here, every day becomes an opportunity to deepen your stability, strengthen your discipline, and elevate your clarity. You are no longer trying to change. You are living as the person who already has. Your future will still contain storms. It will still contain uncertainty. But now you walk with an inner compass that never wavers. You trust yourself. You respect yourself. You know how to return to center. You understand how to rebuild momentum. You know how to interrupt old patterns before they drag you backward. Challenges may slow you, but they will never stop you. You have become the architect of your mind, and architects build intentionally. You hold a power now that cannot be taken from you, not by distraction, not by stress, not by fear. Your power comes from awareness, from discipline, from identity. It is self-generated. It is self-renewing. It grows each time you choose clarity over chaos, each time you choose focus over impulse, each time you choose presence over escape. The old self no longer guides you. The new self leads with certainty, courage, and grounded intention. So now the invitation is simple. Live this identity every day. Not perfectly, but intentionally. Continue training your mind. Continue honoring your rituals. Continue returning to center whenever you drift. Let your presence inspire stability. Let your discipline create momentum. Let your clarity shape your choices. You are not waiting for transformation anymore. You are embodying it. You are living as the unshakable mind, moment by moment, breath by breath. This is your new beginning. You have stepped beyond the limits that once defined you and into a life shaped by intention rather than habit. Carry this awareness with you into every challenge, every goal, every uncertainty. Let your mind remain steady when others waver, and let your commitment to clarity guide you through whatever storms appear on your path. Each day becomes a chance to reaffirm your strength, deepen your purpose, and live as the deliberate creator of your thoughts, your actions, and your unfolding future ahead always. Your new way of being. You have arrived at a different version of yourself. Not a distant dream, not a future fantasy, but a grounded, present identity built through awareness, discipline, repetition, and truth. You have rewired your mind from the inside out. You have learned to witness your impulses, to shape your focus, to breathe through storms, and to stand centered in a world that rarely slows down. This arrival is real, but it is also a responsibility, because mastery is not a moment. Mastery is maintained. The mind you carry now is stronger than the one you began with, but its strength depends on how you live from this day forward. You must practice what you've learned. You must return to stillness when the world speeds up. You must protect your focus when distractions whisper. You must guide your emotions when waves rise unexpectedly. This is your new way of being, not reactive, but responsive, not chaotic, but centered, not scattered, but sharp. Look back for a moment at the life you came from, a life pulled by impulses, a life shaped by noise, a life where focus felt fragile and calm felt rare. You lived in loops you didn't choose, environments you didn't question, in habits that drained you more than they served you. That life is no longer your home. You stepped out of it. You rebuilt yourself from the inside. You chose intention over impulse, discipline over drift, awareness over avoidance. And because of that choice, you now stand at the doorway of a life defined by clarity and purpose. Your new life does not promise perfection. You will still face storms. You will still feel stress. You will still encounter moments where old impulses knock at the door. But the difference is profound. You are no longer powerless in those moments. You know how to pause. You know how to breathe. You know how to redirect your mind instead of surrendering to chaos. The tools are yours now. The discipline is yours. The identity is yours. From here, your task is simple but sacred. Live in alignment with who you have become. Protect your focus as if it were treasure. Honor your peace as if it were oxygen. Build environments that support your clarity. Choose actions that reinforce your identity. Create momentum through micro wins. And above all, return to center whenever you drift. Your center is your power. Your center is your compass. Your center is the foundation of the unshakable mind you've earned. This is not the end of your journey. It is the beginning of your true life. Walk forward with calm conviction. Move through the world with grounded intention. Let your presence speak louder than your fear. Let your clarity guide your steps. You are now the architect of your mind and the author of your becoming. Guard your inner world fiercely, live deliberately, and let every day reflect the strength of the self you have chosen to be.